Hello and welcome back to TNWKS, the Now We Know show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learned something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zak.
And I'm Buzz. And in this week's episode, I'm really quite excited.
Oh, so am I.
Because we're going back to the moon.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, support Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon or join our members on YouTube for early access, ad-free content and exclusive episodes.
Yes, we're going back to the moon this week with an update all about the current state of the Artemis project, if you want to call it.
Ah, yes, because we did do a podcast on that.
That's right, which is all about taking mankind back to the moon, landing on the moon for the first time since the 60s.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
And also putting a permanent moon base on the moon.
And that's something like a sci-fi movie.
Having a permanent orbiting space station around the moon, and for it ultimately to be a jump-off point to Mars.
A catapult to Mars,
exactly.
Yeah. How
and
exciting.
The reason we're talking about this week is because on the 15th of February, the Intuitive Machines Nova C lunar lander named Odysseus lifted off on a SpaceX Falcon rocket from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And the thing is, it's doing really well, and it's going to land on Friday.
Wow.
And obviously this podcast is being put out on the Thursday, so it'll be the day after.
That we'll actually know whether or not the mission was successful.
So far, everything's looking good, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Because first, we have
Weird and Wonderful. Okay, so I've brought in a weird and wonderful story this week. So, the headline is, Highland Games trophy missing for 90 years returns home to Scotland.
Woohoo!
So, the Cabrac Picnic and Games ran annually from 1877 to 1935. It was revived in 2022.
Okay, so it's like a Highland Games.
It's a Highland Games.
Right, we're tossing the cable.
But without the trophy.
Oh dear.
Following a public appeal, the Rose Bowl was found in Devon by a relative of the silverware's last winner.
Ah, I know the feeling.
Yes.
Yes, because just to quickly sum up for the listeners, martial arts instructor, I used to teach swordsmanship, and as part of that there was this wonderful, it was like the pinnacle of swordsmanship trophies when you were talking about the single-handed steel backsword. You call it broad, yeah. Broadswords were used as well. We had variations in backswords, but if you just think of a single-handed sword, it was the UK's pinnacle trophy run by the British Federation for Historical Swordplay. I won that twice. I'm the only person to get their name on that trophy twice. Called the Gloriana Cup.
Wow, what an achievement.
And two of my students did as well.
Wow.
All the other names on that cup were individuals from individual clubs, whereas my club won it 4 times.
That is...
And the last time it was played,
amazing.
which was a number of years ago now, I believe an Australian chap won it.
Oh,
Who
yes.
was visiting.
I remember when this was all kind of headline news.
And then I discovered that for some reason, possibly maybe with the intervention of some bottles of brandy, the people in power allowed him to take the trophy all the way back to Australia, never to be seen again.
Yeah, with the promise of some kind of international thing that's never going to happen.
And so the trophy disappeared, and it's somewhere in Australia, never to be seen again.
But yeah,
there you go. So I know the feeling when something as precious as that disappears.
It would be amazing if we could get the Gloriana Cup, the original Gloriana Cup, back to the UK.
Yeah, I mean, we did substitute the cup for a cup called the Valor Cup, I believe.
We did.
That we sponsored to replace it.
Which, funny fact, I won.
You did. Anyway, so they got their Rose Bowl back.
Yes, so the Rose Bowl was silverware that was traditionally awarded to the top performing athlete at the Cabrac Picnic and Games in Moray.
And they got it back.
And they got it back
How many
after
years?
90 years.
90 years. That's amazing, because something like that can easily just be melted down.
Exactly.
Or just repurposed.
I mean, for instance, let's just go to a show like Antiques Roadshow. It could be that it could be passed down to somebody who knows no
Nothing-
idea about the significance of this particular
Mhm.
item. It's just a random bit of
Trophy.
assorted silverware.
Yeah.
And it could be put on Antiques Roadshow or whatever, just to be sold for, what,
Yeah.
50 quid?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had a chap not so long ago on the Antiques Roadshow that pulled something like 3 or 4 silver cups out of a skip. That is sports cups.
Yeah.
And he sold them on.
Yeah.
But so these things can get thrown away.
Exactly.
So for them to get it back after 90 years, well done there.
As an amazing achievement and well done.
What a great bit of news this week.
Good bit of luck.
Superb. Anyway, now we're on to this amazing venture that mankind, or peoplekind, I don't know what you can say these days. Humankind, okay. Mankind being a generic term for everybody, okay.
Yeah.
So we're going back to the moon. And the Odysseus Lander is the second recent lander that's been launched into space. The first one a few weeks ago.
Was that the Japanese one?
No,
or was it Chinese?
No. This was, again, one that went up from America.
Right.
I'll talk about the details on that shortly. Unfortunately, that had a fuel leak on board. I think the launch was fine. Everything was fine. It got into orbit, and it was meant to, I think, orbit the Earth and slingshot its way off to the moon, get into lunar orbit, and then land somewhere in the South Pole region.
But because of a fault, didn't it burn up?
It didn't burn up on purpose.
It was a deliberate.
It had a fuel leak in the lander, which means it would never be able to get...
Functionally made it, yeah.
Yeah, it would never have gotten there. So rather than having the space debris floating around, which obviously can collide with other satellites, just be a hazard generally, they had the control over it that they could basically bring it back into the Earth's atmosphere, let it burn up, and any bits that managed to get through the atmosphere would just end up in the sea, which they did, which was a big shame.
Yeah.
But as I say, last week, the Odysseus Lander took off, and I don't know if you saw any of the footage when it got into space. Absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen it, that is you, Zach, or listeners listen to the podcast, go on YouTube, look it up, because it is so crystal clear now. We've got
it's ringing a bell. I think it had a brief stint on the news.
It's got such... Well, that's the trouble I find with the terrestrial news in the UK, at least. You know, you get something as... well, to me, amazingly interesting, and to so many people, amazingly interesting news articles like this, and they
like essentially history
making, and they randomly get onto the news, or you might, if you know, have something at 10:25 in the evening, and you missed it.
I mean,
a little mention.
I mean, to put it into comparison, something like football gets a higher slating on the news than something as groundbreaking and as technologically advanced as this.
Yes, well, hopefully, by the end of this week on Friday, Odysseus would have landed, and the news will find that newsworthy to actually broadcast.
Fingers crossed, eh?
As with all usual kind of news media outlets, if it had a problem and crashed, then it'll be all over the news. Because they love negative material.
It's very strange, though, isn't it?
That's the way... I don't know. It's all subversive, isn't it? Keep pumping everybody with negative stuff. Anyway, on a positive thing, this is a positive step.
In the right direction.
Humankind in the right direction. And before we carry on with the details of the mission, while I've been discussing it over the past week, talking to people about, I can't wait for this week's podcast, one question did come up, and it said, why are we bothering? Why are we spending all this money to go into space when we've got so many problems on planet Earth? Shouldn't we be fixing those first?
It's really interesting you should bring that up, because that argument has been prevalent ever since we originally went to the moon.
Yeah. And, well, I think there's a big difference at the moment between when America went to the moon in the first instance, and obviously subsequent countries have put landers. I think even India has recently put a lander on the moon. As you say, I think was it Japan that put one up recently, but unfortunately it landed upside down.
Yeah, on the dark side of the moon.
Well, there is no dark side of the moon. Sorry, I've got to pull you up on that. There is no
fun facts on the Now We Know Show podcast.
There is no dark side of the moon.
We just call it that.
It's a completely wrong
it's
term.
a fallacy.
There is no dark side, because when the other side of the moon, is facing the sun, when we don't see the moon, because it goes through its moon phases, and before it becomes a new moon, you've basically got the Earth's shadow blanking out the moon. The Earth is between us and the sun, so the Earth is blocking the moon, and you can't see the moon. And then gradually, as it goes through its moon phases and creeps out of our shadow, and the sunlight lands on it. But of course, when the moon is between us and the sun, the far side of the moon, as it should be called, is completely lit up by the sun. So there's no dark side. Okay, so let's put it that way. Anyway, that's fact.
It was Japan's. It was Japan's
that went upside down. Yeah, because they had a problem because the solar array is on the top of it.
Yeah, so it couldn't get charged,
which was a real disappointment. The poor thing landed.
But it made it.
It made it there.
So that's a positive.
But it's part of the issue with going to the moon. It is not something you can do easily.
Of course.
It is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
To get anything to the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, even getting out of Earth's atmosphere is one problem, and then getting there and landing safely. I mean, you can imagine the calculations. It's not like you can take a space vehicle and literally fly it by looking out the window.
Of course not.
All this has to be calculated. And
this isn't a movie. This is real life.
This is real. But this is part of the thing, with the new Odysseus mission, is that part of that is to, when it lands on the South Pole region, where they're looking to hopefully at some point in the future, not too distant future, put a permanent moon base, then that will have lots of equipment on board on this mission to help with navigation, to make landing safer and easier to do. Okay, so that's part of the mission. To recap and answer the question of what's the point, why we spend all this money. Yeah, I can see why people say that. They say, oh, yeah, we've got the Earth, we've got the problems, we've got global warming, we've got this. The Earth is, it needs fixing, you could say. You could argue the Earth needs fixing. And you could argue, well, why does the Earth need fixing? And the Earth needs fixing because
the ultimate thing is
mankind is screwing it up.
Yeah.
Because if we weren't here, then it would be just ticking along quite merrily.
It'd be the natural order.
Natural order, but we like to
mess about with
with the natural order. Well, that's the thing. So, stop for a moment, take a breath, and think that actually humankind leaving planet Earth is part of the fix. In fact, it is, for the future, going to be a major part of the fix. I've said this before with Blue Origin's philosophy is to make the Earth the paradise that it should be by removing all heavy industry off the planet. There are so many resources out there just in our solar system, with the asteroid belt, is obviously different minerals and things on the moon that is the nearest thing to us, but we can go further out and mine and produce and manufacture off-world. Now, the whole point of that is, the fact is the human race, we're almost at carrying capacity of the planet Earth at the moment. It's calculated to be about 10.5 billion people on the planet would be hitting the carrying capacity of the planet. And that's
a frightening thought.
That should happen around 2050. Now, of course, people...
That's within our lifetimes.
People throw into the mix, human expansion of population tends to fluctuate because older people die off, infant mortality, things like that. But still, the human race, funny enough, hasn't bottomed out.
No.
It's still
going up and up and up.
And it's still expanding. And it will continue to do that. And there are arguments to that. But as long as there are resources to feed people and to care for people, and we don't have any major pandemics which wipe out vast amounts of people, then population will keep expanding. And
it's not like the resources go up or anything.
No, when the the population expands, obviously in the natural world, then if you had say a forest that was full of say deer, and they themselves have natural predators, such as wolves and things. You take away those natural predators, then
they're going to proliferate.
They're going to proliferate, and they're going to eat themselves out of house and home.
Well, that's why we do culling and stuff.
Yeah, until the point where they've destroyed their environment and they themselves are starving and they're dying off because they haven't got anything. But if you can keep feeding the populace and keep moving it forward, it's going to keep expanding. And that's not necessarily that's one of those questions of how we deal with that for a further podcast, not
Yeah,
today.
it comes on to that question of morality, doesn't it?
We're talking about going back to the moon. So the problem you've got is this expanding population on the planet, finite resources, and also with things like climate change, etc., and rising sea levels, you're getting coastal areas which are basically going to be underwater within 50 years. Places are getting so hot.
Yeah, they're becoming
having droughts.
uninhabitable. Yeah.
They're becoming uninhabitable. Some people are having to move out.
Yeah.
So you're getting a bigger influx of people into other habitable zones.
Yeah, which then become
Puts the-
uninhabitable.
But that puts a stress on resources.
Yeah.
And again, you haven't got continued resources that are going to last everybody forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of research is going into how do we feed people using things like, plants, and how do we feed people by insect proteins and things like this, because we need to be able to manufacture and grow so much more food easily, cheaply, and effectively to feed this growing population. So yes, it's very important. Right now are the first footsteps that we're taking on that journey to go out.
Into
Now,
the cosmos.
if you could take all the dirty engineering and everything off the planet, all the mining off the planet, and the planet became a place where people just lived, nature could be left alone to be, have its ecosystems untouched. We don't need to chop trees down, things like this, and everything. We were taking resources which are openly available to us off world. That's where we're at. We're taking those initial baby steps, and it's so important because otherwise things could possibly in the future very possibly crash and burn.
Yeah, essentially, because we have the potential of all this industry going off world at the moment, but say something untoward happens, whatever, not suggesting like nuclear apocalypse or anything, but that opportunity then is extinguished.
Yeah, I mean, just take something that is a part of everyday life, which is the extreme weather conditions that we're having. They're affecting everybody. Tsunamis on coastal regions, say flooding, torrential downpours, which caused mass flooding in places like India last year.
Yeah.
Europe, wildfires, and just all especially when you get wildfires and things, all those fumes, all the chemicals that are released go into the atmosphere, and it compounds the situation, etc., etc. Anyway, so let's get back to our main subject after our little delve into how humans are destroying the planet. This is a positive step. So to answer the question, yes, I can see how people would say space exploration is expensive and what's the point? But the difference is, back in the 60s, that was funded by the government. It was funded, therefore, by taxpayers' money.
Yeah. Now
it's going commercial.
Yeah,
where
being privatised.
Private companies are doing the work. And this private company, Innovative Machines, is poised to undertake its moon landing at the end of this week, as I say, with its journey to the lunar surface proceeding without any major issues so far. The Odysseus Nova Sea lander will start performing those procedures early on Friday the 23rd of February. It's scheduled to land near the Malapert A crater in the moon's southern polar region. The reason for that is because it's already been found that there's the most likelihood of having frozen water.
Yeah. So water is a vital resource for humans to be on the moon.
Exactly. So they need to be there in a place where they have got the facility of getting at that water resource. Not only for drinking water, but also because you can make rocket fuel out of it as well.
Yeah.
And I think part of the Odysseus
mission
is to actually test
see if
some of that water-based fuel, see how it works. Anyway, so going back to the Odysseus mission itself, the Odysseus has this week performed a series of engine manoeuvres since it launched from Kennedy Space Center last week, and that's partly why I said earlier about if you'd seen the footage, because when you see the footage of the actual lander separating from the SpaceX rocket in orbit, it's just so crazy.
It's a marvel.
Clear.
It's a marvel.
I mean, gone are the days of the crackly images in space and not being able to see it. It is so crystal clear. And that's part of what I'm really looking forward to when we actually see that lander land.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be the clearest images we've ever seen of the moon.
Oh, undoubtedly. But the great thing is, part of its payload is a separate camera unit, which, as it goes into its landing procedure on the moon on Friday, it will jettison that camera.
Okay.
Which will itself float because it's in space. Okay, so it'll jettison the camera, and then that camera will record the whole landing sequence from away from the lander. So like
That's
when
cool.
when people, often sort of like mention about the photographs of Neil Armstrong coming down the ladder.
Well, that's just going back to that whole conspiracy theory.
The moon landing. They say there's a picture of him coming down the ladder out of the lunar module. Who's outside taking the photograph? They always love to use that one as a reason.
It's CGI.
It's CGI or it's
Have you seen CGI back in the 60s?
Yeah, but they always say that this is all false and we haven't been to the moon. The fact that outside of the module had loads of cameras attached to the legs and things is the point. But this one, without a shadow of a doubt, you're going to see the whole landing from this module. So even if it went wrong at the last moment, the thing is that camera array will separate from Odysseus and we'll be filming it, so even if it went wrong for whatever reason, we're going to get to see that in glorious 4K. It's crazy stuff. Over this past week, 2 engines commissioning and trajectory correction manoeuvres have been performed. They did think that they were going to have to do a third one, but at the moment they're so happy with how everything's going, they're not going to have to actually do a third trajectory correction manoeuvre.
Yeah, fingers crossed it stays that way.
Yeah. Anyway, so at this present moment, Odysseus continues to be in excellent health and is approximately 68,000 kilometres from the moon. Over the next several hours, flight controllers will continue to analyse the flight data ahead of the lunar orbit insertion. Whee!
That's a cool title.
Exactly. And so it goes on. If Intuitive Machines is successful in landing Odysseus, it will become the first private enterprise to place a vehicle on the moon's surface. It will also mark the first time a US flagged vessel has completed a lunar landing in 52 years.
Wow. That is a prospect. It really is. That is proof that it is really that hard to get back to the moon.
So over the next day or so, while the lander remains in lunar orbit, flight controllers will analyse the complete flight data and transmit imagery of the moon back to Earth.
Hey.
Huzzah! So it's not just the landing we're going to get to see, we're actually going to obviously see the moon's surface from once it gets into its orbit.
Close up, yeah.
Yeah.
So on the Odysseus lander, obviously it's got the 2 cameras, but what else kind of like science experiment wise has it got on there?
Right. Kind of what its mission prerogative
Yes,
are.
yes, obviously 'cause it's got to get there first, but what is it going to do when it does?
Well, I've been kind of looking into this as far as the payload is concerned. So what's it carrying on board? So let's run through that, because you'd be surprised on actually how many things that it has actually got as a payload.
Really?
And some of those things are going to be surprising.
Oh, I'm actually quite intrigued.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So it's going to have a lunogram.
What on earth's a lunogram?
Okay. It weighs 200 grams, I believe. And a lunogram, it's part of the Galactic Legacy Labs, and it's a plate mounted on the Nova C lander, which contains information about the Earth. Once bolted into the lander, it does not have any other function during the mission. There is a consideration that it may be removed in the future by standard EVA tools.
Right, so it's kind of like that time capsule type of effort that if something finds it or something, like future generations or even potentially aliens, they can go, oh, that's where that's from.
Exactly. We also have on board Moon Phases Art Cube.
An art cube. This is unexpected. What do you mean by an art cube? Because I'm just imagining some kind of like Pictionary type thing.
Well, it's interesting, this one. The payload says it weighs 1.2 kilograms. Okay, it's Jeff Koons' first ever NFT project. It's a groundbreaking endeavour by one of the world's most prominent artists, titled, funny enough, Jeff Koons' Moon Phases. And it centres on 125 miniature moons Okay,
Okay.
created to illustrate how the sun and shadow appears to carve the moon into its phases from full to eclipse. And it's kind of like I've got a picture of it here. Not that that's any good for the listeners, but it's kind of like a series of mini moons in a square block.
And what purposes does that have?
Well, that's bizarre. That's why I said this might be surprising. What's going on.
Like, so that is going to the moon.
That's going to the moon, and it's an art project.
Yeah.
Okay, kind of beyond me on this one.
That does kind of sound a bit odd.
It does mention about NFT. Now, I must say, I've heard about NFT. It's where you can buy the rights to digital
content. Yeah.
But I don't quite understand how NFT works. Maybe our listeners can put in the
Fill
comments.
us in, yeah,
let
of
us
course.
know. But yeah, so
it's certainly the subject for one of our AI
I assume
episodes.
it's some kind of art project that then people who are into their art and have more money than they know what to do with can buy the rights to that NFT artwork.
Yeah, well,
that's been on the moon.
Yeah, my immediate thing with that is, how much did that cost to get it up there?
Yeah, it costs a lot just to put
fuel wise, like a kilogram is no short feat.
Okay, I agree, but at the same time, it's not taxpayers' money.
True, it's privatised. So who are we to give an opinion on it?
So there you go. Anyway, then it's got the Omni Heat Infinity.
Now, this sounds more sciencey. Come on.
So Nova C incorporates Columbia's Omni Heat Infinity thermal reflective technology to help the project survive extreme temperatures in space. There you go. So
do you get extreme temperatures in space?
Oh, yeah, because the heat from the sun. We live, obviously, on the planet, but we are protected by our Earth's atmosphere. Otherwise, we would just shrivel up and get... I mean, when it's a sunny day and there's no cloud cover, I mean, we're gingers. Okay? We can go out in the sun for 5 minutes and turn lobster red.
Yeah.
You know, if I take my socks off in daylight, my feet burn. You know,
that's a bit sad.
I know, for us gingies, but there you go.
Represent.
Yeah, but now think that is basically the sun's radiation, the heat from the sun that is it's cooking our flesh on the surface of the planet through our protective atmosphere. Okay, I mean, I'd even go as far as to say when it's cloudy, I can get sunburn. And so, can you imagine what it's like when you're outside of the protective shell of our atmosphere? That intense radiation.
Yes, because I've never really thought about it like that.
I mean, it's kind of bizarre, really, because space is both obviously freezing cold because you're in that freezing vacuum of space, but the intensity of the radiation from the sun
can and does
create such high temperatures.
Yeah.
So if you're on the moon's surface, you've got a situation where you're going to be exposed to very high temperatures, but then when you're in shade,
very low temperatures. Yeah.
Very low temperatures. So yeah, this is all part.
It's always that sci-fi trope where as soon as you take your helmet off, you freeze to death.
Yeah. So that's testing new technology for that heat shielding. They also have the Lone Star Lunar, Lone Star is now pressing ahead with its first of a kind lunar data center on board the Nova C. So it's kind of like a really high end data center. So all your data to go into this, I'm assuming it's like some kind of hard drive data center. So that's being tested out. What else have we got? We have what I mentioned earlier, Eagle Cam.
Eagle Cam.
Eagle Cam will take the world's ultimate selfie when it captures the first ever third-person views of a spacecraft making an extraterrestrial landing.
So this is the deployable
camera. Yes.
Yeah.
As Intuitive Machines Nova C lunar lander approaches the surface of the moon, Eagle Cam will separate from the lander to capture the moment as it touches down.
I do like the terminology Eagle Cam.
Eagle Cam. Well, it's eagle-eyed, isn't it? It's eagle-eyed position. So I'm really looking forward to that. That is going to be incredible.
Especially when we get those footage.
Also, we have the ILO-X. The ILO-X payload is a precursor to the ILO flagship Moon South Pole Observatory. So this payload includes a dual-camera, miniaturized lunar imaging suite that aims to capture some of the first images of the Milky Way's galaxy center from the surface of the moon.
Whoa, hang on. So this is actually looking out as a telescope into the universe, almost.
Well,
into our galaxy, yeah.
Into our galaxy, but focusing on the centre of our galaxy.
Right.
Okay, because we are on the outer spiral arm of the
Milky
Milky Way galaxy. I mean, we call the galaxy the Milky Way. So if you think of the galaxy being a spiral of basically billions of stars with their own separate solar systems, it's looking towards the centre of our galaxy.
To see what's there.
Well, yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic.
I mean, what is there exactly? I mean, we can only speculate.
I believe that there's meant to be a black hole.
Oh,
At
that's
the centre
nice.
of the galaxy. Don't quote me on that. If you know,
Please comment below.
well, I'll need to do some research and see if that still holds
But
up.
we do love our space stuff, don't
Because the thing with science is, it's like if you go back to the 50s, I think it was the 50s, we still felt that there was vegetation on Mars.
we? Yeah. Yeah.
Very respected astronomers looking through the optical telescopes they had at the time could see dark patches on the surface of Mars,
So therefore,
and those dark patches would change during 12-month period, and so they assumed it must be some kind of living vegetation. But actually, when we managed to get the first satellites there and the first explorers like the Viking probes, it was discovered that actually there is nothing living on the surface that we know of anyway, but there's certainly no vegetation on Mars, and but there's a lot of storms, dust storms and things, and it was probably that was what they were observing through telescopes. Very, not very detailed images. All fascinating stuff. So that part of the payload is going to be looking at the centre of our galaxy.
wow, that's
How
really
about that?
exciting.
We also have the RFMG.
Al, what's that?
The RFMG technology uses radio waves and antenna in Nova C's tank to measure exactly how much propellant is available. There you go. So it's basically like your fuel
Count.
fuel gauge. The RFMG could be crucial during future long-duration missions that will rely on spacecraft fueled by cryogenic propellants. So what we were talking about, making propellants out of water. So very interesting stuff. So actually it goes on further on this one. Cryogenic propellants like liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen or liquid methane. These propellants are highly effective but are tricky to store as they can evaporate quickly, even at low temperatures. Being able to accurately measure spacecraft fuel levels will help scientists maximise resources as NASA moves towards its goal of returning humans to the moon via Artemis.
Yes.
There you go. A very important part of what the Odysseus mission is obviously going to be dealing with. Now, we have I don't know if you'd pronounce this by its letters or its name. It's the Scalps. It's the SCALPSS. Okay?
Scalps.
Will capture images of the effects of the lander's engine plume as it interacts with the lunar surface while Odysseus is descending. And as the dust plume settles after the spacecraft lands, this information is critical for validating predictive models on how particles on the lunar surface are moved by rocket engines and allows scientists to analyse the close-up imagery of the surface of the moon. Data from Scalps can be used for future Artemis vehicle design to ensure the safety of both the lander and any other surface assets nearby during landing. So this is the point. When you've got something landing on the moon and you've got the moon dust, let's call it that, the debris on the moon, you need to know like how far that bloom is going to be thrown out.
Yeah.
If it's going to have any detrimental effect on engines, on whether it gets into crucial working parts of machinery and things. So, if you've got a moon base and you've got all sorts of technology there, and you've got a lunar lander bringing astronauts onto the moon and then lifting off again, you don't want to suddenly find that you are being swamped with
all this debris.
dust and debris that might be clogging up, for example, the oxygen scrubbers and things.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's as simple as that. So that obviously they're going to be testing out that, and this is going to be analysing.
These are all things that you could just easily just forget about. It's glad that they've actually got the people on it to really kind of think and analyse this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have the Rolsess.
The Rolsess.
The Rolsess, which will use a low-frequency radio receiver system to measure the electron plasma environment on the lunar surface.
Jesus, that sounds fun.
Go. So this is going to be really high-tech
That's
stuff.
high-techy.
Yeah, the plasma environment measurements will provide critical information for Artemis astronauts and the design of rovers, spacesuits, and other exploration systems. So that speaks for itself, you know. So this is really getting to vital information.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty, yeah.
To design the vehicles, even the spacesuits, as it says.
How to make things more effective.
Then we have the NDL. The NDL is a LiDAR-based light detection and ranging sensor composed of an optical head with 3 small telescopes and a box of electronics and photonics.
Wow.
There you go. The NDL uses lasers to provide extremely precise velocity and range, distance to the ground, sensing during the descent and landing of the lander. So this is going to be obviously vital information for when they start wanting to actually land a manned craft on the moon.
Yeah.
So absolutely fascinating stuff. And we also have in the payload the LRA. No, just LRA. The LRA is a collection of 8 approximately half-inch retroreflectors, a unique collection of mirrors that are used for measuring distance mounted to the lander. The mirror system reflects laser light directly backwards to the orbiting spacecraft that emit the laser light to precisely determine the lander's location on the surface of the moon. So this is all part of the guidance system, I assume.
Yeah.
So that means that they can precisely. I think that's what's happened in the past. Is you get you think you've calculated where you want your lander to land, but it doesn't always land exactly precisely where you want it.
Yeah.
Hence maybe why the Japanese one ended up upside down. But what you want when you're sending astronauts there, you want to make sure
you want to have the best
land
chance. You want to have
precisely where they need to land. So all this tech is just crazily vital to further missions. Then we also have the LN1. The LN1 is a small CubeSat-sized S-band radio navigation beacon that will demonstrate autonomous spacecraft positioning to support future landers. Radio beacons like the LN1 can guide incoming and outgoing spacecraft and landers with precision and reduce fuel consumption. This experiment is part of NASA's Deep Space Network, or the DSN, for one-way ranging and Doppler tracking to provide real-time positioning like the way GPS works on the Earth. As future Artemis communications and navigation network systems are developed, hardware like LN1 and its capabilities basically will be part of a much larger infrastructure when it comes to future missions. And there we go.
Wow.
That's the payload that it's gone there.
That is amazing.
All sorts of stuff on this lander, measuring everything from navigation, looking into the depths of our galaxy, testing out for the plumes, how the landers cause plumes of moon dust to be thrown about, and how that can have effects on future missions. It's got all
it's very much observation and analysis of all these different aspects that it takes to be on the moon.
Even be able to obviously see from like the heat shielding and etc.
Of course.
About how to design the type of new spacesuits they're going to require to be
to,
able to
to
work
give
on the moon.
to give humans the best chance.
Well, that's
at
right, because
sustaining themselves on the moon.
well, for
And getting there.
for a far longer duration.
Yeah.
Because obviously they were just there for a tiny short period of time.
Of course, yeah.
Back in the 60s, but now we're talking about having. Obviously, there were subsequent missions, with like the lunar rover and everything like that, with the Apollo missions. But it is vital that future Artemis missions that are going to basically put a permanent base there need every scrap of information they can delve. And landers like this are doing that
Now.
initial work.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're going to be. Let's just hypothesize maybe for a moment.
Mm?
As we kind of wait for Odysseus to make that amazing landing and start his work. So let's hypothesize what things are going to be like in the future on the moon.
Okay, let's do it.
You're not going to send astronauts there with a shovel to start building.
No, that's never going to happen.
So you are going to see further missions going to the moon, which is going to send technologies there.
Yeah, wasn't one like 3D printing capabilities to like print buildings?
Yeah, so you're going to have some kind of habitat. So that might be habitat structures which may initially be temporary in order to then construct more permanent ones. There has been discussed, and I know they have been testing out 3D printing by replicating the dust on the moon. Combine that with water, which they would obviously not carry there, that would be found on the moon, to create a concrete and then be able to print out these things. I mean, they have got other ideas, such as if they could find caves, etc., where they can just
block the entrance type of thing,
and have an underground dwelling. It's going to be really interesting to see
which way it goes.
You need to send technology somewhere which can also produce rocket fuel, because you're not going to carry the rocket fuel there that's going to necessarily also bring you all the way back. It makes it far more sense if you only take the fuel to get you there and manufacture the fuel you need to get you home.
But imagine that's going to be a frightening prospect.
Well, that's what is definitely going to have to happen with...
if you told an astronaut, by the way, we've got the fuel to get you there, but then when you're there...
You've got to rely on the machinery that you've already sent, the tech that you've already sent, that's automated.
And the resources there.
That's automated and produced. But that's the thing.
That's a very big responsibility.
If you've got automated tech on the moon's surface, which is producing fuel and oxygen.
Yeah.
I think, we talked about that, the Mixie, because they've got oxygen producing machine called a Mixie, if I recall right, which they've been developing to produce oxygen and to scrub out carbon dioxide, these Mixie units. But if you've got that there, then obviously you're going to be able to monitor that from the Earth's surface, and you're going to certainly be able to monitor it from any orbiting station that you've put that orbits the moon. So before you get to the lunar surface, you'd like to think that your fuel tanks there are full.
Yeah.
And everything is in
place.
That
would be reassuring.
Your oxygen is there, your water is there, your fuel is there. I mean, if you've got, it's just like any survival situation. I'll say in basic, it's like any survival situation on the planet Earth. You need shelter, you're going to need water, you're going to need food, and in this case, you're going to need fuel if you're going to come forwards and backwards from the place. So if you've got those things all organised, then
fingers crossed.
Hopefully, the Artemis missions are going to be basically taking people to the orbiting space station. Then from the orbiting space station, you've got the Moon Lander that will come down, and then that Moon Lander will return to the space station, and you'll be having this transit of astronauts circularly moving from the planet Earth to there, doing their time there, and then coming back again. And if it all goes well, next step Mars, but next step Moon. So here we are, on the verge.
On the cusp.
I can't wait for Friday just to see how the landing goes. I really hope that they release the footage showing us the landing.
Of course, yeah. That'll be really cool to see.
Don't keep us waiting, because that's...
Fingers crossed and toes that it all is a big success.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm excited about every aspect of this mission, but the main thing I'm looking forward to on Friday, apart from obviously a safe landing, is that eagle eye camera being jettisoned and watching the whole thing happen.
Mm.
You know, and that is just going to be amazing.
So that's a really fascinating update. But before we leave, it's time for the Mystery Hat of Mystery.
I've got the mystery hat of mystery in my hand.
Yes, the Sherlock Holmes hat.
That's right.
Has been grabbed from the other side of the studio.
Yeah, we're getting very, very thin on the ground.
I might have to update how many topics are in this hat.
Yeah, I know.
Or we'll have to find something else to do.
I think we'll switch it for a different thing. I think.
Okie dokie.
We'll have to come up with some new suggestions.
So let's find out what the next topic for our exclusive episode for our patrons and YouTube members is going to be.
Who's going to pick?
I'm going to pick.
Okay.
See if you can guess.
Well, you pick because I was the one who's done all the jibber jabber this week.
Okay. All right, I'm picking.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. So, the topic, well, not I'm going to say topic, I'm going to say the episode.
The episode?
Episode is episode 21.
Oh, 21. Are we on 89 at the moment?
This is 88.
88. Did you say 21?
21.
21.
This is way back in the day.
I don't know. I really have no idea.
Would you like a clue?
Give us a clue.
Was
there a special guest?
No.
Okay.
Well, no.
Okay.
Not at that point, no.
Okay. Come on.
Closest to it eating-wise, from what I recall, was sausages and cider.
That doesn't help at all.
Okay, I'll give you a thing. It's an eating one.
It's an eating one.
But with a twist.
An eating one with... Well, it's not chili.
No?
No, it's not chili. I don't know. I give up.
Bean boozled.
Oh, my goodness me. I forgot all about that. That was the horrible jelly beans.
Yeah, the horrible jelly beans.
Oh, gosh. That was forced upon us by Jack. Thank you, Jack. I'll never forget that one. I'm sure I had a bogey flavour.
I wonder if we could be persuaded to do another one of those at some point in the future. That's
do
certainly...
you want to eat more bogey flavoured beans?
We can talk about it in the exclusive episode,
We
so
shall.
stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes. That's a Lunar Lander. Goodbye from Zak.
And that's an orbiting goodbye from Buzz. Goodbye.
You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts. Keep up to date with everything ZWP on Facebook and Instagram, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. And remember to join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access content and exclusive episodes.